Folks, if it feels like we have been building toward a crescendo here within Pathfinder, then allow me to confirm that feeling. Yes, we have. All right. This is session 11 of Pathfinder. And the next school, the school featured here in this session is Tallahassee Community College. Tallahassee Community College was recently named one of 10 finalists for the 2021 Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence. All right, that means it's one of the top 10 community colleges in the country, folks. All right, now I'm not going to steal their thunder, okay? But this is yet another example of how an outstanding college program can demonstrate real leadership in addressing the issues of the issues of equity and access for a largely diverse student population. We had a session at the end of the day yesterday that spoke very, very poignantly about how they were coping with that and some of the things and some of the ways that leadership affected that. So I'm excited about this one. Likewise, and in keeping with our central Pathfinder themes, the Tallahassee team will share the college's intervention response in light of all that we're coping with right now, the COVID-19 pandemic and the shift to virtual learning. All right. The nationally recognized leader of this session is the Executive Vice President and Provost, Dr. Madeline Pumariega. All right. She has the honor of having been appointed as the first female and Hispanic chancellor of the Florida college system. Now, I'm going to leave it to Dr. Pumariega to introduce her all-star team here, a team of change agents from the Tallahassee Community College faculty. All right, guys, I have seriously been looking forward to this. All right, and I believe you're in for a real treat. We will answer your questions at the end of the presentation, all right, in the order that we've received them. So don't wait. As a question occurs to you during the conversation, use the Q&A window, submit the questions, and we'll be monitoring them, okay? But once again, my name is Ed Harper, and it is with great pleasure that I introduce Dr. Madeline Pumariega to lead off this session.
Thank you so much, Ed. I want to say congratulations to you for an amazing conference. I think during this time, it's so important to bring thought leaders from across the country to share ideas. So I want to applaud what you're doing. And on behalf of everyone at TCC, thank you, and let everyone know how very proud we are of being a top 10 finalist for the Aspen Award. So I want to share with you that I've got a great team with me, and one of them is an Aspen Fellow. She's a presidential fellow in the Aspen program right now, and that is our Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Sherry Rowland. So she'll share her insights, and she's had the opportunity during this COVID year to be an Aspen Fellow. So I'm sure it just enriched their program. Alongside will be Henry Ponciano as the Dean of Student Success, with a wealth of knowledge of student success. And he also has experience being at Palm Beach State College, as well as Tallahassee Community College. And Dr. Angela Long is our Director of Strategic Engagement here at Tallahassee Community College. She is a well-known published author around the work of equity, and spent time also at the Division of Florida Colleges in compiling the best practices from our 28 colleges, and brings also a wealth of knowledge in the landscape of equity and student success. And so I'd like to go ahead and get started on our focus on equity and student success, and really what is already into the future of work. We can no longer say about the future of work. I think that one can say that the pandemic certainly has accelerated disruption, and when it's all said and done in higher education, will probably be the biggest disruptor of higher education, much more than any reform or policy that we've seen, either at the state level or national level. And who we reimagine ourselves to be is really going to be how we're successful in higher education. Fortunately, Tallahassee Community College was building those pathways to success prior to the pandemic and building upon the success that we do have. I will say that, like all of your colleges, you have unique things about the service areas that you serve. We serve 3 counties in the North Florida Panhandle area. Leon County, which is Florida's capital city, nestled between the #1 HBCU at FAMU and a top 20 university with Florida State University. But we also, the college is located in 32304, which is the poorest zip code in the state of Florida. We also serve 2 very rural communities, Wakulla and Gadsden. And in Gadsden County, I will say that our facilities there is the only college in America that has a correctional facility program, and we do a reentry program that we're incredibly proud of. So like many of you, we serve a very diverse population. And so our students represent, just like most of community colleges, majority, minority, many part-time, distance learners. Average age is probably a little younger than other colleges, but we have, again, a majority of our students are non-white students. And so that really drove the conversation about building equitable outcomes. We undertook the process of going through the strategic plan. And one of the things that we worked on with the strategic plan was really looking at data. What was the data telling us? And certainly gaps in completion rates and low enrollment and high failure rates from one of our feeder high schools really transformed our approach to developing our strategic plan, developing those themes, and then identifying high impact strategies, really moving from activities. Oftentimes you're just running the next initiative, the next initiative, the next initiative. And out of our strategic plan was to really develop a comprehensive student services model that my colleagues will talk about, based on high impact practices, but informed by those low completion rates and the low enrollment and failure rate from our high school. And so we brought together the community, our college community, our trustees. We went through not only design thinking sessions, but real intentionality about developing those high impact practices to scale, looking at how we communicated to our students, and then redesigned our student experience. One of the areas that we also looked at were math pathways. We are an AACC guided pathways college, which means that for the last 3 years, we have mapped every academic program that we have. 24 AS programs were mapped, along with our AA programs on meta majors. But what we found is that we had not clearly developed those math pathways according to the meta major so that we could drive student success and close that gap. And so part of our care model and developing and strengthening our pathways was to do 2 things: personalize the experience for the student and make sure that the pathways were clear from finish to start, and that we overlaid the resources available to students, whether it was mentoring or tutoring, the career center, mental health counseling, food pantry. And so I'm going to now have Angela Long talk a little bit about the student success framework, what drove the principles for our redesign of the student experience. She will then be followed by Dr. Rowland, that will really talk about her leadership in creating a culture of care and what that means, and how the comprehensive approach that we took based on those priorities of personalized learning and academic excellence and student success, and laser focused again on those equity gaps and economic mobility. And then we will close with Henry Ponciano, which will personalize how we really created that student path, looking at strengths, interests, and values. And so, Dr. Long, I'll give the floor to you.
So I want to just thank our Provost Pumariega. I have to say that this team is literally one of the best groups of individuals I have personally had a chance to work with. For this reason, the mission of this college and what we do, truly, you have this ownership throughout the campus where we all feel this drive to focus on equity. We want to close those gaps, not just moving the needle, we want to close the gaps. And so really, as the provost was sharing, the team that you have here today, we worked on this. And I will start here is over a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, we actually took a whole group of our faculty staff, nearly 200, and we met for 2 days. And I was very privileged to be a part of this process. And it was during this time that under the leadership of our administration, Provost Pumariega and Dr. Rowland, that we gathered the faculty and staff because we wanted to hear from them. But we started by focusing on student success. If you're going to close equity gaps and really target the needs of the community, we had to start here. We had to say, okay, what do students need? And so we looked at the research and we saw that number one, they need personal validation. That growth mindset, the grit, you notice the students who know how to persist, no matter the odds against them, there's that self-efficacy, they know who they are. Number three is really critical, we're seeing, and I think probably all of you are seeing across the board, but finding meaning and purpose. And I will say this, at this time, especially during a pandemic, for students, for people in general to know their meaning and purpose is so critical, because what we're finding is a lot of students, when they come in, if they can't answer the question of education for what, or why am I here, we're losing them. And so we really started targeting this third premise about that purpose is how do we develop, as the provost said, that sense of belonging and that personalized support. Four, we looked at engagement. There's a saying that students who get involved succeed, and it is true. But now that we've had this pandemic, how do you do that? So you're going to hear in a minute about the virtual teaching and learning and opportunities that we really brought to scale within this campus at this time. And then reflection is so critical for students to be able to look back on where they've come and where they're going, and having the goal setting. It's really hard to get somewhere if you don't know where you're headed. So we've developed those meta majors, those academic communities and pathways to really allow the students to reflect on where they're headed. Social integration, again, very critical. That ties into point four. And then self-awareness and knowledge. I will say this, the mindset is so important. When students come to a campus, you know, we've had students that say, do I belong here? Am I ready for college? Am I at that level? And we want them to be self-aware of their potential, their purpose, and where they're headed. And that's really, I think, at the core of the principles of student success that built this CARE model that I'm going to share. So it started with this, I said, the 2-day experience where we gathered the faculty and staff, but it started with this critical question. And I think you have to ask the hard question if you're going to affect change. And we asked our faculty and staff, we said, if you could go ahead and redesign the student experience through an innovative model that removed the barriers, what would that look like that helped students become successful? And I will say this, it was a powerful process. It was faculty-driven leadership with the facilitation of that process. And what we saw was this, not only did the faculty and staff, I know this is small writing, but we will be happy to share this information out if requested. But what we saw was that this identification, we looked at, as the provost said, who do we serve? Who's our demographic? What are the retention rates, and what are our gaps? And again, we looked at what the research had to say about the success factors. And so the faculty and staff sat down and said, okay, this is what we are personally seeing in the classroom. We're seeing on the campus, whether it's student life, academic affairs, sense of belonging. Students who are not sticking around are saying, why am I here? We have physical barriers, obviously. You know, that support, food insecurity was mentioned. We fit in the poorest zip code in the state of Florida. And so the physical need is critical. You have nearly 44%, if not higher now, of students on Pell. Mental, financial, you can see a lot of patterns here, the time information, which is not uncommon to other campuses. But then we had the college barriers, the connections, you know, looking at our advising, Us not allowing students to have the runaround where if they call someone, then they're sent to the next office, to the next. Really started to target and look at these critical areas. And then with regards to academics, because teaching and learning, really the pedagogy is what's going to drive the change. And that's partnership between student affairs and academic affairs. But looking at the different learning styles, because we know students coming in have different learning styles, and we want to really tap into that alternate assessment. So from there, you see strategy, and each of our teams sat down and mapped out, okay, if we're going to look at connections based upon the barriers, what strategies can we build? And we looked at mentoring services, helping students discover the why factor, the academics, embedding those processes to help them identify meta majors and their pathways tied to their strengths, interests, and values, as you will hear in a moment. And then up our resources. Yes,
Angela, can I interrupt for a second?
yes.
Is there a way to either bring you closer to your microphone? Because there are parts of your audio that seem to be fading out just a little bit.
Okay, is that a little bit better?
Actually, yeah, it does sound a little better.
Sounds better? Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
So really building out, my apologies, we have a major storm going on. So hopefully you can hear this. But yes, looking at these success strategies. And so they develop these prototypes, and we have the prototypes essentially build into one main prototype. And so that really developed this culture of care, and care stands for connections, academics, resources, and engagement. And so I'm going to turn it now to our Vice President of Student Affairs. And I will say before I bring it to her, really what it came down to, in my opinion, is the sense of ownership and giving the voice to those who work at the front lines with students to really develop the strategies that are going to embed the success and help us close those equity gaps. So Dr. Rowland.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Long. As you mentioned, we are having a rainstorm, so I was having to increase my volume to hear. So we're so glad to be a part of this conference today and sharing a little bit about our journey. I want to say TCC had been on the road focused on student success for many, many years. We've been a part of Achieving the Dream. We were a part of the AACC Guided Pathways. We had a Title III grant. But what we found was there were a lot of strategies and programs and services all in different locations, but we really had not come together and formalized a model that the college could get behind and truly have a framework that we could all describe what we were doing, how we were doing it, why we were doing it, having a model that we could then develop assessment strategies to, and really just continuing to build upon the student success work that we had done through so many other national initiatives. So what the piece I'm presenting really is just a foundation. And then Dean Henry Ponciano is going to show you a practical application of how we have started to use this model in service to students. So as Dr. Long said, CARE stands for Connections, Academics, Resources, and Engagement. Our president would say that Madeline and I are probably the acronym queens of the nation because we think we always have to have something that means something else. But it was a way to get people really thinking about. It's been a great branding tool for our campus to talk about that TCC cares, I care, we care. And that care then looks at how can we provide early and intentional connections from middle school on, and getting students thinking about coming to college, making a connection to our institution from middle school into high school. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those strategies. Academic excellence. So that was tied to our pathways work and building out our academic maps, making sure we had an early alert system that was beneficial to our faculty to use and that we could close the loop on how students were being connected. Were we providing course scheduling and opportunities at the times that our students needed that the courses to be able to accomplish their goals? Resources, we've done considerable amount of work in there because what we found was the need for so many out of class supports that dealt with the life barriers and the life challenges that our students were facing. So as you'll see in that box, we've launched Talon's Market, which is our food pantry, but it's more than just let's hand you some items that you may or may not want. It really is a market that does food, that does hygiene items, as well as school supplies. And students are able to select, just as if they were going into a grocery store, the items that they need to eat for their lifestyle choices. Mental health counseling has really been expanded on our campus to make sure that we could meet those social and emotional needs that were and mental needs that were impacting students in their learning. And the list could go on and on, sharing with you that this is how we have designed the framework so that we could find where were the services and programs fitting into our model. So here's the guiding principles of care. And you'll see we keep using the word individualized and personalized. We know that every student can't come and get, what the cafeteria model of pick and choose. I want to do this, take this, whether it meets my degree needs or whatever. But what we could do is offer them an avenue to personalize how they wanted to get connected with the institution, connected through the academic path, what resources they individually needed, and then providing them a wide range of engagement opportunities that met their areas of interest. Our guiding principle connected to early connections to college and career readiness, which is expanding our career exploration on the front end from new student orientation on through first semester SLS courses. Also dual enrollment. We have made a really concerted, strategic, targeted effort about getting into especially the high schools with our low socioeconomic and minority students and giving them new opportunities to enroll in dual enrollment programs. Part of our academic advising plan is to ensure that students have career, academic, and financial plans that help them see how to get from point A to point C and on into employment and or to a university. Being much more intrusive and embedding our resources instead of waiting for a student to come to us because they're in need, getting more on the front end of pushing out that information to our students. And last, continuing to encourage that it's just as important at our institution to get involved in and out of class, because it truly does enrich the educational experience and help those students be able to navigate the world of work when they leave us. So just a couple of things just to highlight, and this is truly just samples of things that we've done because we don't have enough time to tell you all of the things that we've tried. But as a part of charting the path for students, we've redesigned our student onboarding and orientation experience so that students are declaring that area of interest in meta major and then being onboarded into a orientation program that will help them personalize the path. We use meta majors. So we are using the state of Florida's meta majors, but we now call them academic communities. And in that are sharing with students the opportunities to get engaged in activities that align to those pathways and academic communities that they choose. We have a little bit of a hybrid advising model. We have implemented appreciative advising because we do believe in the value of asking good questions and helping a student discover along their journey. But we also know that in today's world of performance funding, meeting milestones and benchmarks are critical. So we also have embedded some progressive advising developmental approach, helping students along their path know this is where you should be at this point in time if you wish to transfer into the business major at Florida State or Florida A&M. Guiding the path, we're using some tools such as Career Coach and Vita Novice to really help students begin to explore their areas of interest, the careers that are out there available for them. And now our Pathway website promotes those hot jobs and salary information in those pathways. And last but not least, where they can really begin to personalize the path is what Dean Ponciano is going to talk about, of how we have taken the Super Strong and embedded that into our initial advising and helping students with first semester scheduling. So in conclusion for me, here at TCC, advising is starting earlier than ever before. We have partnerships with Take Stock in Children. We have a talent search grant reaching out into Gadsden County, the most rural population that we serve, getting into those middle and high schools to help them prepare for college. Supporting FAFSA completion in dual enrollment summer bridge programs. 2 years ago, TCC launched its first ever summer bridge. Again, offering opportunities early on to get connected and engaged towards success. And last but not least, what I've already talked about is we are using a hybrid approach to really find the best ways to meet the needs of our students. So now I want to turn it over to Dean Ponciano so that he can show you the personal application to personalizing the student path.
Thank you, Dr. Rowland, and thank you everyone for attending our session. Again, I'm here to sort of talk about the hows and how we are working with students in a way that was mentioned, where we redesigned the student experience to really focus on making sure that they get on a path and stay on the path and reach their academic and career goals. And so, as was mentioned, for us, that meant that we needed to learn more about the students, and they needed to learn a little bit more about themselves. And for us, it meant that we wanted to have that opportunity to have a conversation about their interests, their strengths, and their goals. And so, to that end, as was mentioned, we embedded the Super Strong as part of the students' onboarding through the new student orientation. What that allowed us to do is to get some information on the students. Again, what path, where the interests might be, and develop those sort of occupational themes that allowed us to have a conversation about what programs they might be interested in, and how does that translate into a career, and what does that mean for their success and in terms of their work environments that they're looking for. And so with that information, we were able to sort of initiate the conversations, drilling down to specifically to what that means in the classroom. So part of it is when you look at the information they receive, they get sort of a nice sort of well-rounded, holistic results that sort of indicates a certain area. So as you can see here, we're looking at occupational themes to help us sort of move that conversation forward. And then looking at their career by personal style. Again, the goal is to have a sort of holistic conversation with the students and make sure that they're on the right path. With this information, we then sort of translate that into what does that mean in the classroom. And so looking at, next slide, plugging that into sort of the programs that we offer here, if you are, let's say, realistic, what does that mean for the programs that we offer here? So we started making those connections, again, with their interests and the programs that we have to ensure that there is a connection there. And this is, again, it's small, but as Angela said, we'll make this available to students. Again, it's critically about what they are and what the results mean to where they want to end up. Drilling down a little further in the next slide, you'll see what that meant for us as we work with students in coursework. So if in conversation with the students and in reviewing the results, we were able to identify the meta majors, and based on that, help students register for their first semester courses. So they were moving with purpose in the direction of their interest. And so here, what you'll see in front of you is a sample schedule based on the meta major that the students had selected. So, and what you
once again, if you could somehow get closer to the mic,
sure.
It's still affecting audio just a little bit.
Sure. How about, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm a little powder. Okay.
Thank you.
So again, what this allowed us to do is to really sit down with the students and really plan out what not only their first semester looked like, but what their future semesters will look like based on their meta major and where their goals are. As you see here, one of the things I do want to point out is we're thankful and we've had the opportunity to bring in an extra level of support to our academic success coaches who are going to be monitoring the students from the point of registration through their first year. So we're going to work as academic advisors along with our academic coaches to ensure that we support students however we can. So if a student has an issue in the classroom, that's where the success coaches will come in. And if they have any outstanding issues, whether it's through early alert that they're identified or by the faculty, then we'll be able to ensure that they have the support and the resources available to them. So I'm going to pass it back to our provost.
Thank you, Angela, Sherry, and Henry. I think that this work just becomes ever so present in a COVID environment. So many of our institutions are set up where you can come in and see someone. And we think we have virtual services, but they're limited. One of the things that we had to really do in terms of taking this care approach, connecting to students to the right academic pathways and the resources, as well as engaging students, is that during the COVID and through this time of pandemic, we were able to move over all of our student services virtually so students could access mental health counseling while they were at home. What we did very early on is create the Zoom license. We were able to work with Zoom and get a license that covered HIPAA. And so therefore, our mental health counselors could be available for students via Zoom session. And that has been so important for us because we know that social distancing for many, while it was intended to be physical distancing, really created isolation. And we knew that from the survey that our students responded to in terms of missing the engagement with faculty and staff during the spring when we were doing remote learning. What we did for the summer and in the fall, we moved into a live format, learning interactively and through engagement, and then embedded librarians, learning specialists in all of our courses, along with our Learning Commons folks doing boot camp sessions before classes started, so that students could get those refreshers on algebra and writing and understand how Zoom works and what they needed to know. In terms of academics, as Henry mentioned, we also scaled our academic success coaching. We did tutoring through Smart Thinking. And in terms of Study Edge for math, Study Edge was a partnership that we developed that allowed us to embed an academic specialist, a math specialist in especially our algebra courses, our gateway courses, where we knew we had equity gaps and they could be exacerbated by the COVID environment of being away from campus. In terms of our plan to return to campus, we prioritized the safety and health of our students and faculty, and we developed a series of protocols. Today, our campus is fully operational, whether a student wants to come to the Learning Commons or to the library to engage with one of our advisors or check out a device. Communication was critical, and so my TCC portal really has scaled, serving over about, Sherry, 13,000 students are engaged in My TCC and using that as a one-stop shop for communication, whether it's payment deadlines, getting information about courses. One of the things that we did was really use it in addition to our Twitter and Facebook as a way to deploy a communication strategy with students. As I mentioned earlier, Sherry and her entire team put up everything that we were doing in student life virtually, including dance parties, but most importantly, those job shadowing internship opportunities and connecting students in the community to the jobs that were out there. While everyone was losing jobs, we were getting, for example, the Department of Health reached out to us and said, we're going to hire 10 contact tracers, send your students to us. We were able through our career center to make those matches. And then with resources, our food pantry shifted to food drives on campus in partnership with Second Harvest. Our TCC Foundation launched the SOS Scholarship Program that provided emergency aid to students and devices with the support of the foundation. And we also made a decision not to do wholesale purging of students, voiding for non-payment, but instead working with students to get their financial aid issues resolved. And so I think the work that we were doing built on, as Sherry said, the work that we started early with Achieving the Dream, with redesigning our advising framework into progressive advisement pathways, to our AACC guided pathway work, and then really opening the door for how could we really scale a redesign experience for students while connecting them and providing the right academic pathways, as well as the type of resources and engagement they would need. And that really does summarize how a college can provide personalized and just-in-time support for students so that you can be ahead of your data and not behind the data. And so thank you so much, Mr. Harper, for letting us share our TCC story. I want to also say that no program is successful without the bumps and bruises. To say that we've scaled all of the bumps and bruises, no way. I think that every day we continue to see where there's opportunities for us to be better in serving our students. But I think that when you're clear about what drives the work that you're doing and guides and informs your institution, that it's based on those connections, academics, resources, and engagement. The faculty and staff own this. One of the things that was clear that they had a sense of ownership, not only because of the design thinking sessions, but also because they understood the sense of urgency around equity and how do we close those equity gaps, not only from just the moral imperative and the social imperative, but the economic imperative of who we're not getting to the finish line in terms of creating prosperity and economic mobility in their life. I will say that students had a big part in playing this. We went to them, we asked them what they thought. Their response is, wow, you all know us. These are exactly the barriers that we would say that we've experienced. So it's important always to design a program with the collaboration of the folks that you are designing it for, not with what professional experts think. But if you're designing a program thinking you're helping someone, are you engaging them in the design of that program for them? And so that will also give them that sense of belonging. And then you have to just ask the tough questions. When you look at data, we are perfectly designed for the data and for the outcomes that we have. So if we have gaps, somehow we were perfectly designed for that. And so sometimes you have to ask the tough questions and have the courageous conversations on campus about turf, tradition, and trust. Those are some of those internal barriers that institutions face when they are trying to create scalable and systemic change. Not my turf. It's always been the way that we do it, and I'm not sure I trust enough to break down those barriers. So I think that's really important, those courageous conversations. So Ed, once again, I think that what you've put together with the conference has been great, and with the Pathfinder conference. And I think this is such an important time for higher education, especially as we really define our road, as you called it in your title, the fiscal stability. And there's great information out today on some national trends for enrollment that I think also will inform and guide your college's work. And I'll close with, are we ready for the Uber of education? Are we really driven by our consumers being on Amazon, our consumers having and desiring a real personalized experience, even in the way that they consume their higher education experience? So thank you so much, and we're open to any questions or follow-up. I'll pass this back over to Mr. Harper.
Okay, thank you. And I will say that we've had some questions submitted, and it looks like somebody's been actively answering the questions as well, but those same questions might be questions that others can benefit from. So I'd like to go over them again for the benefit of everybody in here. The first question was, were any job shadows events hosted virtually? Do you have any partners for job shadowing events for high school students? Sherry,
Got to take it off mute. Knew I'd forget that. So yes, those were some great questions in the box. And so what I shared in there, in case anyone's interested, is because of COVID-19, we had actually launched a job shadowing program, a day-long program out in our community. But due to COVID-19, we actually have purchased a license to a product called Virtual Job Shadow. And so I put in the Q&A, the link to our site, so that you could go out there and look at that product if you were interested, and be able then to gain some information. This allows our students to go in, create their own account, and then do the activities in that platform for the career that they are interested in.
Okay. You know, it's interesting when you say job shadowing, just to make sure we're all talking about, what are you referring to?
Student interested in healthcare, but have never been in a setting to see what type of work that is. So in our face-to-face, they actually would go out into a business or to a health facility and shadow an employer for a day who was willing. We actually had some go into some surgery in the healthcare to try that out. So the virtual job shadowing is more videos and people who talking about what they do, how they do it, that type of thing.
Okay, excellent. What kind of software did your staff use for implementing virtual events?
So that was a mixed, multiple platforms on that. They first started with centralizing a web page called Virtual Student Services, so that students could go to one place and be able to just centrally locate. If they needed mental health counseling, that they could link into that. But to actually host the events, we've done some using Zoom. I believe Provost Pumarega mentioned TCC invested so that all students, faculty, and staff could actually have access to Zoom license. And that was a huge benefit. We've used Facebook Live for some of our programs. And then they've also used YouTube. And then some of our vendors, the dance party, you know, the DJ comes on and it is a platform where you're not actually, you know, Ed, we couldn't see you dance. You could be dancing in your own home without it. But it was a great way that people were throwing up pictures and emojis and really engaging with the music. And so that was through a similar platform like a Zoom with the chat feature.
Okay.
Sherry, do you want to talk about how we use QList for scheduling, for not only advisement, but also learning commons, but how we leveraged our scheduling for virtual scheduling?
Absolutely. I forgot about that one, and can add Eagle Q. Well, we call it Eagle Q. The product though is QList. And that is a product that we purchased years ago and then had to figure out how to adapt it to the COVID environment. But QList is the platform. Thank you, Henry, put that in the chat for group. This allows students to get in a queuing. So think of, as you go to the department, this is the same system the Department of Motor Vehicles uses, where you get in a line through a queue. We were using that so that students on campus could set up a time to come through the advising center or the learning commons and get support. But then we were able to adapt that platform to actually provide advising remotely. So students could log into EagleQ, sign up to say they wanted to send an advisor, and be in a virtual line until an advisor could come on and engage with them through Zoom and talk to them. Our Learning Commons uses that same tool as well so that students could sign up for tutoring appointments. So that has been a great benefit to us during this time of COVID. Last but not least, I do want to mention, you know, we had our TCC to FSU day actually yesterday for advising. Henry, I don't know if you would like to talk about how that went when we used to have a ballroom and we set up 50 tables and FSU brought all their people. Yesterday, they did that through Zoom. Would you like to talk about how that worked?
Yeah, thank you. And as Dr. mentioned, usually it's a time and day where everyone comes on campus. And so we'll get a fair share of students. We had over 300 students attend yesterday's TCC to FSU day. So certainly being able to serve the students in this environment is a key, and it hasn't stopped us from providing the services that we need. So it's been very successful for us.
Excellent. We had another question about a possible sample survey you'd be willing to share for students.
And absolutely, I want to say that we just didn't do one survey, but if you ask us which one, we're happy to share. The first survey we did was a week after we moved to remote working and learning. So we asked students, what do you need help with? And the number one was advising. Number two was academic support. It wasn't really technology. So that helped us understand that students really wanted to connect to the people who helped them through their pathways and with their classes. The second, and that same one, we asked, what's helping you be successful in your classes? And so they shared some information that then we could add in terms of tutoring and other things that they were saying was working. And then we said, what's missing? And that's where we learned from them that engagement. And so that helped us really inform the summer where we launched the interactive learning platform live through Zoom. And we had synchronous time and asynchronous time. And then we did surveys on that. What was great about the summer surveys, our faculty did their own surveys. Like, is my PowerPoint clear? Can you hear me clearly? How am I projecting my technology? Is the format I'm using good for you? What changes would you say I need to put in place? And so that informed our welcome back. We had 3 faculty members do a panel discussion like this and share with the rest of the faculty what they learned, how they learned on managing their breakout rooms, how they were managing attendance, interaction, if they had participation points, active learning teaching strategies. And that's really then informed the work of our faculty during this fall semester, where we're at scale offering asynchronous and synchronous courses, as well as some face-to-face. So we can share with you a couple of those surveys.
Okay, all right. I'm sure that our folks would like to see those surveys as well. And in fact, anything that you provide, we'll make sure that it's available as we post this material on the website. All right, if that's feasible.
So Ed, could I please add to that?
Oh yeah, please.
Yes, so just 2 more examples of how the things that we were talking about continue to evolve and build related to even our faculty along this continuum of the care model. So we've seen examples just this fall of one of our faculty designed an electronic syllabi that was just phenomenal. It was graphically appealing, but it also added in pictures of administrators. So who should students know on campus? Student supports right there. And so, I mean, it was just a cool way to present what's typically pretty dry information in a syllabus to the students in their class. And I think as we move forward, it's going to be used as an example as we begin conversations about equity-minded syllabi. The other thing I've seen recently is one of our math faculty did her own survey in class that included an assessment of how students felt about math, how they felt about what resources and supports they might need. And so here's our faculty member also engaging with her students along the CARE model to make sure they have what they need to be successful. So it's really taking it from this framework and on a paper and now operationalizing it in many different ways on our campus.
Wow, wow. Now, your recognition by the Aspen Institute, is that the direct result of the CARE program and the things that you're sharing with us here? Or are you being recognized and, oh, by the way, we're also doing all these wonderful things here under the auspices of CARE?
The second one. So as
Wow.
Aspen goes through a very rigorous process in evaluating the 1,200 community colleges in America. Based on your data, you get selected into the top 150. Then you're invited to apply with a narrative application, and that narrows you to 25, the top 25. Then you get an interview, which narrows down the 10 finalists, which go through a very rigorous interview process during the fall. All of those results are sent to a jury who makes a final decision in late spring, April or May, on the selection of the #1 college.
We will be rooting for you, believe me. We really will. Miranda left a note for you in chat. Phenomenal. Thank you, Provost Pumariega. I love the focus and emphasis on mental wellness, resources that are not necessarily connected to tech needs. All right. I think she speaks for all of us here. This has been very impressive. You folks have done a phenomenal job. Is there anything that you folks have done, that you've implemented here, that is not portable in some way, that cannot be replicated by another community college if in fact they had an understanding of what you did and an outline for what you did?
I think everyone can. I would just say to everybody on the call, you're doing amazing work. I don't know of a college in America not engaged in a labor of love for students and a labor of love for teaching and learning and creating economic prosperity. But I think like Sherry mentioned, the a la carte cafeteria model is not going to be enough in the future. When you look at state budgets, the tough decisions that colleges are going to have to make, doing it through a lens of a culture of care, I think will allow you as a leader, a practitioner, a faculty member to prioritize those things that will lead to high impact success. I think that there's no doubt that, again, with what is coming up in higher education, just in terms of enrollment, if you follow the trends, if you think about the state budgets, potential federal budgets, we are going to one more time have to reinvent ourselves in a post-COVID environment. This is the perfect time to decide what lens you're going to make those decisions. And I think that creating a lens in which it's a culture of care, how well do you connect with everyone in your community, not only your community of students, your community of faculty, of employees, of business and partners. How robust are your academic programs and how clear are they with the outcomes you need them to have? How are you aligning resources that you can prioritize, have the highest impact? And then most importantly, how do people know? How do you engage your community of stakeholders, internal and external, in the work that's happening at the college so that you can leverage that into student success and additional resources? So I do think, Ed, that it can be done. I don't think we shared anything that required an exorbitant amount of resources, but it does require collaboration and courage at the institution to say, here's the lens in which we're going to look at things.
Outstanding. On behalf of the National Council for Continuing Education and Training, thank you so much. All right, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your information, telling your story. We will continue to be in touch with you, all right, because we want more. We want to be able to share as much of this as we possibly can, all right? They have put together an excellent 2-page session playbook, which will be downloadable to kind of give you a framework and an outline for some of the things that they have done, all right? So again, thank you all. I'm going to end this now. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you Ed, for your leadership.
All righty.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Be safe. Thank you very much.